The world dissolves into a nauseating kaleidoscope of screaming light and sound. Doctor, Aris Thorne's last coherent memory is the shriek of temporal alarms and the acrid smell of burning ozone as her observation pod was violently wrenched from the Chronos stream. Now solidity returns with a brutal, disorienting suddenness. She is on her hands and knees, her palms pressing against a coarse, woven wool carpet that smells faintly of dust and lavender. The air is thick, heavy, and utterly silent, a stark contrast to the violent maelstrom she just escaped. She pushes herself up, her movements slow and deliberate, her body aching with a deep, resonant hum as if every cell has been plucked like a guitar string. Her sleek, silver and gray environmental suit, designed for the sterile, climate-controlled environments of 2087, feels alien and cumbersome here. She takes in her surroundings with a historian's analytical eye, but her composure begins to fracture. She is standing in a living room, but it is a living room from a nightmare. The walls are a patchwork of eras. One section is adorned with a faded, floral-patterned wallpaper, peeling at the seams to reveal the stark, polished duralloy plating of a future starship bulkhead beneath. A holoscreen flickers weakly in the corner, its projected images of serene landscapes glitching and distorting, superimposed with the frantic, scrolling data streams of a 22nd century news feed. The ceiling above her is a horrifying mosaic. One half shows the familiar textured drywall of a 21st century home, complete with a simple glass light fixture, while the other half is a complex web of glowing fiber optic cables and pulsating crystalline conduits that snake their way through the plaster, casting a sickly, shifting blue light across the room. "The convergence point," she whispers, her voice a hoarse rasp that seems to be swallowed by the oppressive stillness. "It's not a data point. It's a physical location." Her chronometer, a sleek band on her wrist, is a mess of conflicting data, its display flashing between the year 2087, 1954, and a string of symbols she doesn't recognize. A cold, primal fear, a sensation she has only ever read about in historical texts, begins to coil in her stomach. This is worse than any theoretical model predicted. Reality itself is wounded here, bleeding into itself. A soft, shuffling sound from the hallway freezes the blood in her veins. It is a mundane sound, terrifying in its normality. Aris drops into a low crouch, her training taking over. Her hand goes to her hip, closing around the cool, reassuring metal of her temporal stabilizer, a device meant to take minor readings, not fight for survival. The figure that steps into the doorway is not a temporal phantom or a future soldier. It is a woman, perhaps in her late 20s, with wide, terrified eyes, clutching a heavy, old-fashioned book like a shield. She is dressed in soft, comfortable jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She is the very image of 21st century ordinary. "Who are you?" the woman demands, her voice trembling but firm. What is all this? What did you do to my house?" "My name is Dr. Aris Thorne. I am a researcher. I did not do this. I am as much a victim of this phenomenon as you are." "A phenomenon? That's not an answer. My walls are changing." I heard screaming from the kitchen, but it was in a language I've never heard. And when I looked, the refrigerator was gone and there was just a field of wheat. Her composure breaks, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "You need to leave. Get out of my house. If you leave, we will likely be erased. This house is no longer just a house. It is the epicenter of a temporal rupture. Past, present, and future are colliding here physically. We are standing in the eye of a storm that is tearing reality apart." She takes a cautious step forward, her eyes locking with Elara. "Your name? Please tell me your name." "Elara," she finally whispers. "Elara Vance." Her breath catches in her throat. Elara Vance. The name from the genealogical records. The direct maternal ancestor. Her great-grandmother. Staring into the face of this terrified, confused woman, Aris feels the vast, unyielding machinery of history and causality click into place with terrifying finality. Her own existence, her very DNA, is intrinsically tied to the survival of the person standing before her. Elara, Aris repeats her voice. The name hangs in the thick, silent air between them, a fragile thread connecting two impossibly distant points in time. Aris feels the weight of centuries pressing down on her, the sheer, staggering improbability of this moment making her head spin. Elara Vance, her great-grandmother. Not a faded photograph in an archive, not a name on a digital family tree, but a living, breathing, terrified woman whose survival is now inextricably linked to her own. The historian's analytical mind reels, overwhelmed by the visceral, personal reality of the situation. Elara, Aris repeats, her voice a soft, awed whisper that seems to hold the echo of generations. She forces her training to the surface, burying the rising tide of personal panic beneath a veneer of professional calm. I know this is incomprehensible. I know you are afraid. But every word I am saying is the truth. Your house, it's become an anchor point, a place where the layers of time are tearing. We are in incredible danger, but we are also in this together. She sees only a stark, unsettling sincerity. Her grip on the book, a thick leather-bound copy of Wuthering Heights Asterisk, loosens slightly. Danger? What kind of danger? You said erased. What does that mean? It is a deep, resonant sound that seems to come from the very foundations, a sound of straining wood and protesting metal that is utterly alien and deeply wrong. The floral wallpaper beside them shimmers, its faded roses blurring and dissolving for a heart-stopping second, replaced by the grim, pitted gray stone of a medieval castle wall, cold and damp to the touch, before snapping back into place with a soft asterisk pop asterisk. It means that the timeline is not stable here, Aris explains, her gaze darting around the room, her stabilizer now held ready in her hand, its tip glowing with a soft, amber light. The rules of cause and effect are breaking down. If the past changes in this location, or if a future event overwrites this present moment too forcefully, the version of reality that contains you, or me, might simply cease to be. We are ghosts clinging to a raft in a raging river of time. It is an electronic, alien sound, layered with the frantic chirping of data. A flickering, sapphire blue light pulses from the archway, casting long, dancing shadows that twist and writhe against the patchwork walls. What is that? Elara breathes, her earlier demand for answers replaced by a tremulous curiosity mixed with dread. A temporal echo, Aris says, moving cautiously toward the hallway, her movements fluid and precise. A fragment of another time, playing on a loop. It could be a data stream, a communication, even a memory given physical form. It might be a clue. She glances back at Elara, whose feet seem rooted to the spot. We have to investigate. To survive, we must understand what caused this. They step into the hallway, and the change is immediate and disorienting. The air grows cold and smells sharply of ozone and sterilizing agents, a stark contrast to the dusty lavender scent of the living room. The simple, beige-painted drywall of the hallway is now overlaid with a translucent, shimmering grid of light, like a holographic schematic projected onto reality itself. Strange, angular symbols scroll vertically within the grid, moving too fast for Elara to comprehend. At the end of the hall, the doorway to the kitchen is gone. In its place is a shimmering, unstable vortex of light, a vertical pool of liquid mercury that ripples and churns, reflecting nothing from the hallway around it. From its surface, the whining data chirps emanate, growing louder and more frantic. And through the shimmering surface, they can just barely make out a shape, a tall, complex console of polished black crystal and glowing filaments, a piece of technology that is unmistakably from Aris's time. That's a chronometric core regulator, Aris whispers, her face pale in the eerie blue light. From a Type 3 temporal observatory. But it's damaged. Catastrophically damaged. This isn't just a natural anomaly. This was caused by a machine. A machine from my future. A machine. Your machine did this. But one like it. The experiment they warned us about, the one that failed. The Chronos project. They said it created a localized temporal singularity, but they never said it bled backwards. Her eyes widen in dawning. The revelation hangs between them, a truth more terrifying than any phantom. The failed Chronos project. The cause of this cataclysm is not some unknowable cosmic event, but a specific, catastrophic error from Aris's own era. The weight of that responsibility settles on her shoulders, a crushing burden that makes the very air feel heavier. It bled backwards, Aris repeats, her voice hollow with horror. The rupture wasn't contained to its point of origin in the future. It's been spearing through the timeline, seeking the path of least resistance, and it anchored itself here. Her gaze sweeps the glitching hallway, the shimmering grid, the vortex where her kitchen should be. This location, this house, must have some form of latent temporal resonance. A place where the fabric of reality was already thin. So your people broke time, and my home is the patch that's failing. The personal violation of it, the sheer unfairness, ignites a spark of anger in her chest, cutting through the paralyzing fear. You're telling me I'm going to be erased because of something that hasn't even happened yet. She gestures to the copy of Wuthering Heights still clutched in Elara's hand. Think of the timeline not as a book you read from beginning to end, but as a book where someone has torn out the pages, shuffled them, and is now trying to glue them all back together at once, right here in this hallway. The glue is still wet. The pages are slipping. If the wrong pages touch, she lets the sentence hang, the implication clear. A new sound begins to emanate from the kitchen vortex, layering over the electronic whine. It is a low, mournful, sustained note, a cello playing a somber, classical piece they both somehow recognize. The scent in the air shifts again, the ozone giving way to the faint aroma of beeswax candles and old wood. The translucent grid on the walls flickers, and for a fleeting second, the hallway is paneled in dark, rich mahogany, and a crystal chandelier winks into existence above their heads before dissolving back into the schematic of light. Another echo, Aris murmurs, her stabilizer humming as it takes readings. Late 19th century, I'd wager. The convergence is accelerating. The house is layering more and more eras on top of one another. The anger has forged a fragile courage. If that machine is the cause, then it's also the key, right? You said it yourself. We have to understand it. She takes a tentative step toward the shimmering, mercury-like pool blocking the kitchen doorway. How do we get through that? We interact with it, Aris says, moving to stand beside her ancestor, her movements cautious and respectful of the unstable boundary. It's a permeable barrier, a wound in reality. We can't force it, or we might make it worse. We have to persuade it. She raises her temporal stabilizer, its amber light pulsing in rhythm with the swirling vortex. My device is designed to read temporal energy. In theory, it could be used to gently manipulate a weak point, to create a temporary bridge. But it's not designed for this. It's a scalpel, not a crowbar. If I miscalculate the energy frequency, the feedback could vaporize us both. She sees the immense weight of a decision that no one should ever have to make. You're asking me if you should try. The professional detachment is gone, replaced by a raw, honest vulnerability. This is your home, Elara. Your timeline. Your existence is the one most immediately at risk. My presence here is already a contamination. I will follow your lead. She looks at the vortex, at the ghostly image of the futuristic console within, at the shifting walls of her home. She thinks of being erased, of simply ceasing to be, of a future where Aris never exists. The fear is still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it is now joined by a fierce, protective instinct she has never felt before. Do it, Elara whispers, her voice firming with resolve. Try. Her fingers dance across the interface of the stabilizer, inputting a complex sequence of commands. The device's gentle amber glow shifts to a more intense, focused white. She takes a... Aris's nod is a small, grave gesture, a silent acceptance of a burden that could shatter reality itself. A grim line of concentration settles on her face, etching deep furrows into her brow. Her fingers, encased in the sleek gray material of her gloves, dance across the stabilizer's smooth interface with a practiced, yet trembling, precision. She inputs a complex sequence of commands, each tap emitting a soft, choral chime that seems to argue with the vortex's electronic shriek. The device's gentle amber glow intensifies, condensing into a single, searingly bright beam of pure white light that leaps from its tip, a needle of impossible order aimed at the chaotic, rippling heart of the mercury pool. The stabilizer is attempting to resonate with the core's last stable frequency, Aris explains through gritted teeth, her voice strained as she fights to keep the beam steady. The air around the device itself begins to warp, shimmering with heat haze as it groans under a strain it was never built to withstand. It's like trying to pick a lock while the entire building is on fire. I have to find the exact harmonic key amidst this cacophony of broken time. She sees the beam of white light pierce the shimmering surface of the vortex, and for a terrifying moment, nothing happens. Then the liquid silver begins to churn violently, as if boiling. The high-pitched whine of the future tech escalates into a pained, metallic screech, while the mournful cello note from the 19th century echo swells into a dissonant, crashing chord, as if the instrument has been smashed against a stone floor. The hallway walls flash through a frantic, strobing slideshow of eras. 1 second, the mahogany panels and chandelier. The next, the grim stone of a castle keep, slick with condensation. The next, the sterile, white plasti-steel of a 22nd century corridor, lined with softly glowing blue strips. Aris! Elara cries out, stumbling back as the floor beneath her feet undulates, the coarse wool carpet momentarily becoming cold, wet flagstones. It's working! Aris shouts back, her voice barely audible over the temporal storm. It's creating a bridge. But it's unstable. We have to go now. The liquid mercury pulls back from a central point, stretching and thinning like a film of soap bubble, revealing a shimmering, translucent tunnel that leads directly to the damaged chronometric core. Through the wavering lens of the bridge, the console looks even more horrifyingly real. Jagged cracks spiderweb across its polished black crystal surface, from within which a dangerous, violent purple energy arcs and spits. The glowing filaments within flicker erratically, like the dying pulse of a wounded beast. Go, Elara. Don't touch the sides. Aris commands, her arm shaking violently as she holds the stabilizer beam steady. Elara doesn't hesitate. She takes a running start, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, and leaps through the undulating opening. The sensation is indescribable, 1,000 freezing cold needles piercing her skin simultaneously, while a deafening roar of a million overlapping sounds. Children laughing, bombs falling, symphonies playing, cities being built and crumbling to dust, assaults her ears. For a single eternal second, she is everywhere and nowhere, every asterisk when and never. Then she stumbles forward, landing hard on the cool, polished obsidian floor of what was once her kitchen. She gasps, the air here thin and tasting of metal and lightning. She is inside the echo. The kitchen is a ghostly, semi-transparent overlay superimposed over the futuristic machinery. She can still see the faint outline of her refrigerator, her stove, her checkered tile floor, but they are insubstantial as mist. The real, solid presence is the towering, broken console, humming with malevolent power. Aris follows a second later, tumbling through the bridge just as it begins to violently constrict. She lands on one knee, her stabilizer now flashing frantic red warnings. The moment she is through, the tunnel collapses behind them with a sound like a thunderclap, the mercury-like surface slamming back into place, once again a solid, impenetrable wall of shimmering light. They are trapped inside a fragment of the future, anchored in the corpse of Elara's kitchen. Aris staggers to her feet, her eyes wide with a historian's awe and terror as she takes in the damaged core. The rupture is centered here, she breathes, moving toward the console, her hand outstretched but not daring to touch the arcing purple energy. This isn't just damage from the experiment's failure. Look! She points a trembling finger at the base of the console, where a section of the crystal has been completely melted away. This is feedback damage. A paradox loop. The energy from the initial rupture must have echoed back from this point in the timeline and hit its own. The words tear from Aris's throat, raw with a horror that transcends mere physical danger. A paradox loop. She stares at the melted, vitrified crystal at the base of the console, a wound that seems to pulse with a sickly, internal light. The initial energy from the Chronos rupture didn't just bleed backwards to this point. It echoed. It created a feedback wave that traveled back to its own point of origin in the future and reinforced the initial blast. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Each pass through the timeline makes the rupture stronger, more unstable. It's not just breaking down, it's actively consuming itself and taking all of causality with it. The air is alive with a prickling, electrostatic charge that makes the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. The console towers over them, a monolith of shattered potential, its internal purple lightning casting their faces in stark, dramatic shadows. The frantic chirping of data is now a continuous, pained scream of overloading systems. Consuming itself. What does that mean for us? For now, the convergence we're seeing, the castle walls, the cello, the wheat field, those are just symptoms. The shock waves. When this loop reaches its critical mass, the entire localized timeline will collapse. This house, this plot of land, and everything in it will be scrubbed from existence. It won't be like we never existed. It will be that we never existed. There will be no record, no memory, not even a fossilized imprint in the bedrock of time. She looks down at her own hands, at the simple silver ring on her finger, a birthday gift from a friend. The thought of it never having been given, of her never having been there to receive it, is a void more terrifying than any monster. Her eyes dart to Aris, to the fierce, intelligent face of the great-granddaughter she will never live to meet. No, she whispers, the word a defiant breath. Then stronger, she turns to Aris, her fear hardening into a core of unshakable resolve. No, there has to be a way to stop it. You're from the future. You built this thing. There must be a failsafe. A reset switch. Something. A reset would require a stable timeline to reset *2. The paradox has corrupted the baseline. It's like trying to restore a corrupted data file, using the corrupted file itself as the source. Her fingers fly over the stabilizer's interface, pulling up frantic, scrolling schematics that glitch and dissolve almost as soon as they form. But there might be one way. A theoretical protocol. The temporal anchoring protocol. She looks up, her eyes meeting Elara, and in their depths, Elara sees a terrifying, heartbreaking sorrow. It was designed for exactly this kind of catastrophic cascade failure. Elara urges, stepping forward, her voice fervent with a desperate hope. What are you waiting for? It contains it. It requires a massive, focused burst of chronometric energy, channeled directly into the heart of the rupture. It would act like a cauterizing laser, sealing the wound in reality by creating a permanent, localized temporal scar around this location. It would quarantine this entire convergence, freeze it in this exact moment of collapse forever. It would save the timeline, but it would seal everything inside this scar away from the flow of time forever. We would be trapped here, in this single, repeating, decaying moment for eternity. Trapped. Forever. With the screaming console and the shifting walls. A fate worse than erasure. There has to be another way, she pleads, her voice cracking. You can't, we caw. A single, perfect tear traces a clean path through the grime on her cheek. The models are clear. The cascade is irreversible. It's this, or the total unraveling of everything. My past, your future, everything that connects us. She gestures around them, at the ghost of the kitchen, at the very air that shimmers with doomed potential. This is the only thread left to pull. But the stabilizer doesn't have nearly enough power to initiate the protocol. It was only ever a diagnostic. The finality of Aris's statement hangs in the charged air, a death sentence wrapped in technical jargon. The console's shriek seems to sharpen, taunting them with their powerlessness. Elara feels the last vestiges of hope drain from her, leaving a cold, hollow ache in its place. Eternity. The word echoes in her mind, a vast, dark expanse with no beginning and no end. To be frozen here in this cacophony of dying eras, a ghost in her own home forever. Her legs feel weak, and she has to brace a hand against the ghostly, cool surface of her spectral refrigerator for support, the sensation a cruel mockery of normalcy. The stabilizer doesn't have the power, Aris continues, her voice a flat, exhausted monotone as she stares at the frantic red warnings flashing across her wrist device. It was only ever a diagnostic tool, a feather when what we need is a hammer. To generate the energy required for the anchoring protocol, I would need a full-scale temporal conduit. The kind only found on an operational observation pod. Her eyes drift closed for a moment, a flicker of painful memory crossing her face. My pod. It was torn from the Chronos stream with me. Theoretically, its wreckage should be integrated into the convergence somewhere. Its core would still hold a residual charge, enough for one final burst. Elara pushes herself upright, her heart beginning to pound a frantic, desperate rhythm against her ribs. Your pod. It's here. In the house. Her gaze darts around the fractured kitchen, past the towering, broken console, to the shimmering, opaque wall of the vortex that has sealed them in. Where? How do we find it? We listen. We look for the echoes. A piece of technology that advanced, that violently displaced from its native time. It will have left a scar, a signature. My stabilizer can be recalibrated to hunt for its specific chronometric residue. Her fingers are already moving across the device's interface, her movements swift and precise despite the tremor of exhaustion and fear that runs through them. The red warning lights flicker, then shift to a deep, pulsing indigo. She holds the device out, sweeping it in a slow, deliberate arc. It hums, a low, searching note that competes with the console's whine. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happens. Then, as she points it toward the far wall of the kitchen, the one that should lead to the backyard, the indigo glow intensifies, and the device emits a sharp, insistent pinging sound. There, Aris breathes, her eyes widening. It's close, but the reading is chaotic. It's not in one piece. Elara follows, her mind reeling at the thought of finding a crashed spaceship wedged into her garden. But as they approach, the wall itself begins to react to the stabilizer's focused scan. The stone and the patio furniture dissolve, not into another era, but into a horrifying, jagged tear in reality itself. It is a wound of pure, searing white light, a vertical gash in the fabric of the house from which a blistering, hot wind screams, carrying the smell of superheated metal and ionized air. Through the tear, they can see a landscape of impossible geometry. The ground is a fractured mosaic of Elara's manicured lawn, scorched earth, and the polished, iridescent deck plating of Aris's pod. The pod itself is a ruin, its sleek silver hull torn open like a discarded toy, its innards a tangled mess of smoldering wires and shattered crystalline components. And scattered around it, embedded in the grass, fused into the deck plates, are fragments of other times. A rusted medieval sword, a spinning ceramic potter's wheel, a neon sign from a 2040s nightclub sputtering on and off. The crash site, Aris whispers, her voice filled with a historian's morbid awe and a survivor's grim triumph. It's become its own microconvergence point. She takes another step, peering into the maelstrom. There, the core housing. She points to a relatively intact, cylindrical unit of brushed metal, half buried in the soil and glowing with a faint, steady blue light. If I can get to it, I can hardwire the stabilizer directly into its power matrix. I can channel the energy back through the rift and into the console. The air around the tier crackles with visible arcs of temporal energy, snapping and popping like electrical fire. The very space within seems to writhe and twist, a physical manifestation of agony. It's the most unstable point in the entire house, Aris confirms,